On January 14th, 1988, President Ronald Reagan issued what came to be known as the Personhood Proclamation. And the Personhood Proclamation was heralded by the pro-life community as the Emancipation Proclamation of the Unborn. And in the proclamation, Reagan asserted, quote, the inalienable personhood of every American from the moment of conception until natural death. And he argued, Reagan did, that the laws of the U.S. Constitution do, in fact, extend to the lives of unborn children. Reagan also declared that January 17th, 1988, be celebrated as the first ever National Sanctity of Human Life Day. And on that Sunday and subsequent annual celebrations of the day, Reagan summoned all Americans, or at least those that agreed with him, to gather and remember the sanctity of human life, especially the lives of those in the womb. Now, conservative Christians like talking about the sanctity of human life. You hear that phrase a lot. It means that human life is sacred and very, very special. Even President George W. Bush talked about creating, in his words, a culture of life. In Bush's presidency, the battle was over physician-assisted suicide, or doctors helping terminally ill patients take their own lives. And according to Bush, in a culture that values human life, not only will people not have abortions, but they won't end the lives of terminally ill patients because life is sacred. Now, I realize I've just stepped into a minefield here with my opening illustration. Usually I start with a funny video clip. I also realize the issues of abortion and assisted suicide are emotional and complicated, which is one of the reasons why we don't get too political here at Rooftop. But I bring them both up because I'm struck at how the sanctity of life gets defined in such narrow terms. Did you ever notice that? Life is sacred, the argument goes. Life is special, so don't get abortions. And don't help terminally ill people commit suicide. That's how the sacredness of life is portrayed. According to some, it means to be anti-abortion and anti-euthanasia. But is that all it means to believe in the sanctity of human life? Is that all it means to believe that life is special? If not, what else does the sanctity of human life include? What else should we be debating? What else should we be discussing? I raise that question because it lies at the heart of the Sixth Commandment. We've been studying the Ten Commandments here at Rooftop in our football-themed series, God's Big Ten. 10 Commandments are God's 10 words of instruction, His basic words of instruction to His people, the Old Testament Israelites, after delivering them from slavery in Egypt. And as we've realized, as we've talked about over the series so far, these commands are all very, very short. They're all very, very simple. They're all almost pithy. They almost seem written for children to be able to recite and understand. Have no other gods. Honor your mom and dad. Don't steal. Don't commit adultery. They're not complicated. They're very emphatic. Now, although we might like these laws to be a bit more spelled out with more explanation about their application, part of the logic of the Ten Commandments is to boil down God's righteous expectations into phrases that are simple enough for children to know and understand. I mean, being kids ourselves, right? Being children, we need God to keep things really simple for us sometimes. I mean, just like I put things very, very simply for my kids. Don't run out in the street. Don't play with matches. Don't run with scissors. Don't play with fire. As they grow up, we might have to nuance those a little bit. But for now, the Ten Commandments are simple, designed to be understood by children. This is no more true than it is with the Sixth Commandment. Sixth Commandment is perhaps the most famous of all the commandments, might be the simplest. You probably know it. You shall not murder. Simple, clear. You shall not murder. Unfortunately, the simplicity of this command leaves us with all sorts of hard questions. What exactly is being prohibited here? Let's start with one of the obvious questions. We're not even actually positively sure the best way to translate this command. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew. Hebrew is easy or hard to translate? Hard. Some translations translate this verse, you shall not murder. Some translate it, you shall not kill. There's a big difference between those two words. Is the Sixth Commandment a prohibition of all killing? Or is it a prohibition of premeditated murder of personal enemies? A lot depends on that translation. And however you translate it, how do you reconcile the Sixth Commandment with God's instructions in the Old Testament that the Israelites were to go into the land of Canaan and wipe out every living thing? How do you reconcile the Sixth Commandment with capital punishment? Do not kill unless somebody does something really, really bad, then kill them. Even God says that killing a person is such a big deal that the person who kills someone should be what? Killed. Read in a certain light, that sounds kind of hypocritical. As my Jesuit English teacher said to me in high school repeatedly, he said, "Why do we kill people? To show people that killing people is wrong." Maybe you've seen the poster. So how exactly should the Sixth Commandment be translated, and what does it prohibit? Does it prohibit abortion? Does it prohibit euthanasia? Does it prohibit killing in wartime? Does it prohibit the assassination of terrorists? Does it prohibit killing in self-defense? Is it okay to maim people, but not to kill them? Does it prohibit the killing of animals? Do not murder, period. Does it prohibit the killing of animals? Does it prohibit the killing of Israelites or all human beings? So I know the purpose of the Ten Commandments is to keep it simple so even a child could understand them, but this particular commandment seems so simple that it's frustrating. I sort of feel like my kids surely feel when I tell them to respect each other. It's one of the cardinal rules of the Herndon household. Respect each other. Okay, Dad, can we wrestle? Well, yes, it depends on how you're wrestling, though. Well, can we punch each other in the face? Probably not. What if we like it? Well, then it depends. Can we kill and maim and murder each other on video games? Depends on the video game. Can we jump up and attack each other from behind, respectfully? Those are the sorts of conversations we have. It's hard to know what this commandment means. People have wrestled and argued over it for millennia. Denominations have actually split over the command. And this is a very important debate with very far-reaching consequences. But let me point out a tendency in these debates and these arguments and discussions that we have over the Sixth Commandment. It won't settle the debates, but it will help us figure out how the Sixth Commandment and what it has to do with us. What I want to point out is the tendency we have to lower the bar as low as we possibly can. Do you know what it means to lower the bar? In athletic terms, a bar is what high jumpers or hurdlers do when the bar is too high. Low bars are easy to jump over. And we like to do this with rules and with laws. We like to keep the bar really, really low to make sure we clear it. I mean, what's the Sixth Commandment? You shall not murder. That's the bar. It's a pretty low bar. Do not kill others. Whatever you do, don't kill them. Even some of our questions reveal our determination to keep the bar low. What about capital punishment? What about war? What about euthanasia? What about suicide, abortion? I'm not saying those aren't good questions, but they're still pretty low on the bar. Don't murder people. Don't kill yourself. Don't kill babies. Don't kill coworkers. I know there are actually a lot of people in the world who need to hear that sermon. But it's still a pretty low bar. It's like arguing whether the bar should be 2 inches off the ground or 3 inches off the ground. This is what we do with laws and commands. We try to keep the bar really low so that we can clear it and still call ourselves religious. Even during this series, we've already noted our tendency to do just that. What do some people think it means to not take the name of the Lord in vain? Don't cuss. What do some people think it means to remember the Sabbath? Don't work on Saturday. What do kids think it means to respect each other? Don't punch each other in the face. What do some people think it means to keep the Sixth Commandment? Don't kill old people and unborn children. That's what we do. We interpret laws in such a low way that we make them relatively easy to obey that so that we can tell ourselves we're obeying them. But hear me really clearly here. God doesn't give us the 10 Commandments just to control our behavior at the lowest level. He doesn't give us the 6th commandment just to keep us from murdering each other. If he did, this could be a pretty simple short sermon. Don't murder one another. For the love of God, that's my main point. Don't murder each other. I'll even give you 3 points. Don't murder each other with the candlestick. Don't murder each other with the rope. Don't murder each other with the pipe wrench in the library or the parlor. But not murdering is not the point of the command. The point of the command is much bigger. The point of the commandment is to reveal the love that God has for all human beings so that we learn to treat them as God does. Here's what I mean. Why is it important for us not to murder people? I hate to have to ask that question. Why is it important not to murder people? Because they were created in the image of God. Because human life is sacred in a divinely gifted way. Because of the sanctity of life. And when I say sanctity of life, I'm not using that as a marketing phrase. I'm not saying it because politicians have said so. All life is sacred in a way far more special than we think. Life isn't sacred because a politician said so or it makes a nice advertising campaign. Human life is sacred because we are created by God in His image. Murdering someone is a gross violation of their dignity as created in the image of God. God tells this to us in the first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 9. He says this, "From his fellow man I will require a reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image." So we are created in God's image. In some mysterious way, we look like God, we are like God. Life is sacred. And to kill someone is to do violation to God's creation, even God himself. Understanding that we are all each individually created in God's image and given the gift of life as our most sacred gift, that should cause us to want to do more to each other than just not kill one another. I mean, if I believe God gave you life as He gave me life, and that you are a little representation of God in the world as I am, I'm going to do more than not murder you. Somebody's laughing. Thank you, Jason. What else am I going to do? I'm going to love and respect you. I'm going to care for you. I'm going to humble myself before you. I'm going to listen to you. I'm not just going to not murder you. Guess who understood this? One guess. Jesus did. Some of you know your Bibles really well. I've been waiting for this. But this is actually one of the first things that Jesus talked about.